All right, well, good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Oh, that's a pin, and it's a long way to the ground. I'm going to die on that. We'll get started this evening in our study on Wednesday night in the book of 1 Samuel. Chris, here in a little bit, buddy. You get me a count? Thank you, sir. We're going to pick up tonight in our progression of the story and studying God's Word together. We're going to kind of pick up on some of the history, and we mentioned last week we're really making kind of a major transitional shift in the story. Up until now, it's been a story all about Samuel and his kind of ascension to the priest, to the prophet, not priest, and to Samuel being kind of the prophet of the Lord and to speaking on the Lord's behalf and some of the things he's going to do later. But we're going to finish out the story of Eli and his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, this week. I kind of projected that and previewed that last week, that we're going to see the end of their line. And this is going to fulfill the promise that had been given beforehand regarding them. So let's do it's been, we've had snow and some people not here last week. All right, so let's do like a real kind of brief 30,000 foot view recap. Can you guys help me do that real quick? Okay, all right. So first of all, the book of Samuel is about, obviously, a guy named Samuel. He had parents. Who were his parents? Okay, Hannah and Elkanah. All right, so Hannah and Elkanah. Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and this lady with a weird name starts with a P, Peninnah, right? Peninnah was nice or mean to Hannah? Cruel, right? She was cruelest to her at what time of year? The time they went to the sacrifices at the makeshift temple, right? It wasn't like the real temple, but it was kind of a tabernacle, and it's the place where they worshiped. Who was the priest and prophet on duty at that time? Guy named Eli, right? Eli had two wicked sons named Hophni and Phinehas. Eli was aware or unaware of their wickedness? He was. Totally aware. And did he deal with it at the time? No. He waited and dealt with it later on, much later, in fact, far too late. And did God hold him accountable for that? God did. God held him accountable, and God cursed him, and God promised a punishment that he would end his priestly line. No more priests after him, which is Abiathar, who later eventually dies under Solomon, right, or David. All right, so that kind of catches it up a little bit where we are. Hannah was a godly woman or ungodly woman? Godly woman, right? And we see through Hannah's life and line some images and glimpses to who else? Another mother later in the Bible. Mary, right? They say a prayer that's very similar, right? She models it after that prayer. And then the figure that's mentioned at the end of Hannah's prayer, there's clearly some language in there that's not directed and targeted at Samuel, right? He can't stay? Well, that's problematic. All right, so we get some language in there that's really like Christic and salvific, right? It's not pointed at Samuel. It's pointed at the priest that's going to come, the good high priest that fulfills all the prophecies. So there's some language in there. It's probably why Mary ends up picking it up. And then there's also in the curse against Eli some information about. Hey, y'all, hold on just 1 second for me. There's a church member calling me that does not normally do this and knows I'm in church. So 1 minute. He may have accidentally called me. Just make sure. Anytime someone over a certain age calls you when church is going on, alarm bells start going off. You just want to make sure nobody's like laying on the side of the road. So anyways, pick up. So Mary models after Hannah. Jesus ends up being the great high priest that's promised that Eli is not. And then we get Samuel, who is going to function as the final what? There was a whole book of them beforehand. The final judge. That's right. All right, so we've kind of caught up. Eli's line is going to end. Samuel's going to be the next judge. Samuel has been faithful up to this point. And now because of Samuel's faithfulness, God is kind of freed to release Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. All right? Now, the title that we have here is to address an issue we're going to see in the text. And it's this idea of a rabbit foot theology. What do you think a rabbit foot theology is? Somebody help me out. What do you think a rabbit foot theology is? Okay, a good luck charm. What object did the Israelites have that they treated like a good luck charm? The ark, right? They figure, hey, wherever the ark goes, good stuff is guaranteed to happen. And did the ark represent the holiness of God? Absolutely, no doubt, right? So much so that when somebody touched it, when they were crossing, right, with Joshua, he dies because it's so holy and he shouldn't have touched it and disobeyed God. But at the same time, we're going to see tonight that God allows the ark to be captured. Now, how can that happen? And why can that happen if it represents such a strong piece of God's holiness? It's because the lesson that God is teaching them is not more important than his holiness, but it takes place in front of a demonstration of his holiness, okay? As God does from time to time. When we sin, we do wrong things, God allows there to be consequences for his actions, even though we're his holy people, in order that it might bring us back to him. So that's kind of the connection and the thread we're making as we read the text tonight and see it, all right? So we're going to read the text in 1 Samuel chapter 4. It'd be helpful if I was where I was supposed to be. 1 Samuel chapter 4, picking up in the second half of verse 1. Remember, because we said verse 1 was kind of a transitional verse last week. Now, Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel, and when the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field of battle. And when the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." So the people sent out to Shiloh and brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. As soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, Israel gave a mighty shout, so that the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid. For they said, "A god has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us, who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage, and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled, every man to his home. And there was a very great slaughter, for 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell. And the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. All right, that's half the story we're going to read tonight. We're going to read the other half in a few minutes. But we're going to, as we kind of do with this, we're going to give a truth statement or maybe a principle to hold on to, and you can kind of fill the blanks in along the way. Anybody not have a sheet that needs one? Mr. Ralph has those. He can get it to you if there's one. All right, I think everybody's got one right now. So here we go. We're going to fill these blanks out that'll hopefully help you track along with this. The first blank is this: God finds no favor in rabbit foot theology. God finds no favor in rabbit foot theology. So the ark of the Lord is mentioned here, and it's mentioned in the next couple of chapters 14 times. 14 times. Nothing else is mentioned that much. Do you think that maybe, as we shift the main character away from Hannah, who's kind of the main character in the first portion, is Eli the main character of this text, this part of the text? No, he's missing, right? He's missing from the entire first portion of it. But he's going to dominate maybe a little bit more the second half. But he's still really not the main character. Are Hophni and Phinehas the main character of this part of the text? No, they're just kind of mentioned here at the end, and then they die at the end. The Philistines aren't the main character. I mean, they respond to the Israelites. The Israelites aren't the main character. What is the one thing that's mentioned over and over and over in this passage? The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. That is the main thing we're supposed to focus our time and energy in on. 14 times, just the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord is mentioned over this chapter and the next two following it. So, this section mentions very specifically and explicitly the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. And it's not always referred to that way, and really it doesn't get talked about a lot. But why do you think that title is used? Because when they are bringing it into battle, they are calling in God's covenant that he made. It's almost as if they're testing God to say, we're going to put you and what you've said you're going to do to the test. And we're pretty clearly told not to put God to the test in that way, right? That God does not favor that. He doesn't like that. And it's almost like they're using this language as an incantation of God serving them and showing up for them. Just something, I want you to hold these things in your mind as we talk about God not finding favor in rabbit foot theology. First, the Philistines defeated Israel in battle. So we've got a first battle here, and the Philistines slew 4,000 Israelites as they go into battle, right? They go into battle, Philistines, this is just a first skirmish, kill 14,000 Israelites. So, and then there's this second fight that's going to happen where the ark gets taken, but it's really set up by the first encounter. The first encounter, they don't seek the Lord out. They don't do anything. They just go to war. Why are they going to war? You have to understand a little bit about the layout of the land. Egypt, as soon as you leave Egypt in flight, the very first thing you pass through is the Philistines area there, where it talks about Ebenezer and this land mass. So that you come out and you've got to go around the Mediterranean Sea. It's not like you've got this big, broad expanse of places you can go through. And you take the shortest route to get to the promised land that God promised his people, takes you right around the coast and right around this Mediterranean Sea. And they would have passed through the Philistines area. And the Philistines would have known about what happened in Egypt. And the reason why there's skirmishes here is because the Philistines are a seafaring people that have settled on the land probably about 750, maybe 800 years before this. So they've settled on the land, they've started to establish themselves, and they're really just now starting to grow as a people group, and they're starting to expand. So the Israelites are fighting for their borders. They're not being aggressive. They're not trying to take new land. It's just that these seafaring people who are now established in the land are growing up. And they were manipulators of iron, some of the first ones to manipulate iron and make weapons, and they were formidable. And not only that, we find out later, what do they have in their midst? Big what? Giants, Nephilim. These important people who are going to cause problems for people in the land. So, seafaring people that come across the sea with giants in their midst taking on the land, and the Israelites go to defend themselves without the ark, without seeking God, and as a result, they suffer a major defeat. All right, then we get into this second defeat. The defeat of the Israelites should have caused them to look to God rather than the ark for a solution. So they take this defeat, and immediately they could have gone to Eli, they could have gone to Hophni, they could have gone to Phinehas, they could have even gone to Samuel, and they could have said, hey, why did we lose or why did we die? And their answer is not we didn't seek God, not that we didn't pray, we didn't have our good luck charm, we didn't have the ark. Like Joshua going into the land to take the land, all they knew was the stories, not the God behind them. So what's the solution here? It's a solution for us as well. The solution to losing favor before the Lord is not to offer better services to him. In this case, the service of the Ark of the Covenant. But to present a sacrifice of the heart. The solution to this problem is to present to God a sacrifice of the heart. Saying, God, our heart is yours. We've messed up. We've done something that you did not want us to do. And they should have taken a hint from the defeat that that's what the problem was. But they didn't. Instead, it was, we didn't go about it in the right way. We didn't perform the right way. We didn't have the right service before God, and therefore God didn't honor that. So what do? They decide that they're going to use the right incantations, they're going to have the rabbit's foot, and they're going to go into battle. But here's the problem. This is the next set of blanks there. God is not incited or trapped by his ark any more than he is trapped by our relationship with him. We can't use magic words to trap God in a relationship with us. I used to think when I was a kid, like I wondered if I'd messed up my prayer of salvation. Anybody wonder that? Did I say the right words the right way and mean it the right way? Did I forget something in there? It's a fear because in the elementary mind, I thought I was trapping God with my prayer into a relationship with me. That's not how it works. God calls us into relationship with him. We can. Do you know how crazy it sounds to think that one individual person can trap and lock God into something that he's obligated to do, that he does not already want to do? And that's what the ark was all about, right? They were going to trap God into having to favor them into battle because they got him in a covenant. That's what they, over and over and over. The ark of the covenant of the Lord. The ark of the covenant of the Lord. We're holding him hostage. We're going to take him with us. And if he doesn't show up, God's not accomplished the thing that he said he was going to do for us. That's not how it works. Who's at the center of this? Who's causing these problems? Who makes the recommendation? It's the two people who should know better, Hophni and Phinehas. It's like their idea, hey, all right, we're going to go get the ark, and we're going to take it, and it's not going to be a problem. We're going to get this thing figured out. So what's the response to the ark's arrival, right? So they take it with them, they take it to the battlefield, and as soon as they decide they're going to take it, everybody just gets into an uproar. This is kind of here in verses 5 through 9. There's a response to the ark's arrival. What's the response? First of all, Israel's pride abounds at the arrival of the ark. Israel's pride abounds at the arrival of the ark. What's it say it sounds like when people when the ark goes out? They do what? They cry out. They cheer. They see that and they get excited. They know what that means. And the people around them may have had the right assumption. I mean, are they guilty? Are the people who are going to fight guilty? I mean, they may not be. We don't know for sure. But I can't not think about maybe churches that are full of maybe some of these big churches, especially like a 20,000, 25,000 attended member church whose pastoral leadership is not even praying before they get out on stage. Not even meeting together and honoring the Lord, not having private worship, not having devotion time. Maybe they go years with an absent relationship from God, and then all of a sudden one day they get exposed for walking and living in sin for decades or years or whatever it might be, right? Is it the problem of the people of God for that to happen? Not necessarily, but a lot of times they're the ones who are hurt the most by it. They're the ones who leave church and don't come back, who have loved ones they've enticed to come, and there's collateral that happens from that. And the people of Israel see the ark, and they're probably assuming Hophni and Phinehas, they've done the right things. But if they'd done anything with Hophni and Phinehas over the last several decades, they would know they are not men who follow God. They were disengaged. They would not. They should have known better. Someone should have been there to hold them to account. Because they weren't, something bad happens as a result. But oddly, if we're going to look for some clarity for how to respond to the ark of God showing up, we actually have to look at the Philistines in this context. The Philistines' humility, which is ironic, cast doubt on Israel's success. Verses 6 through 9. Let's look at how they respond, and we're going to pick up a couple of things out of this. Look at verse 6. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were what? Afraid, okay? For they said, "A god has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us, who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you might become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Be men and fight." Okay. Doesn't end the right way, but there are some things in here that are meant to shame the Hebrews. It's meant to shame the Israelites. Let's see if we can't pick these up. The Philistines model the humility Israel should have had by, first of all, they showed fear. They showed fear. Did the Israelites ever show fear to God? No, they went and grabbed that Ark of the Covenant and all the hubris they could muster to march it out on the battlefield. If we want to avoid rabbit foot theology, we need to approach the throne of God with reverent fear. Reverent fear. You know, God tells us there's only one thing it's okay to be afraid of. It's not okay to be afraid of anxiety. It's not okay to be afraid of worry. It's not okay to be afraid of even, your father and mother to a certain extent, I don't guess. But it says, fear who? The Lord. Fear God. The fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. It's what Psalm says and Proverbs says. So we are to fear God, and by fearing God, we honor our parents, which does mean that we respect them and fear them to a certain extent, right? We honor those in authority over us, but we don't fear. No fear. But the Philistines show God great fear when Israelites did not. So that's the first thing, fear. If you want to not get caught up in rabbit foot theology, approach the throne of grace with fear. Second thing, they showed recognition of God's unique glory. They showed recognition of God's unique glory. Where am I pulling that from? Look at how they respond. They said the Philistines were afraid, and they said, a God has come into the camp. And they said, woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. They knew there was something uniquely special about the God of the Israelites. They couldn't face him like they faced anybody else. They couldn't have the same attitude they have with anybody else. That's what the Israelites should have done. Man, we go to God with a unique, reverent fear that we don't have for anything else because he is uniquely holy. And for us, as we go to God in supplication, whether it's that we have sinned and we're coming back to him, or we're coming to ask him for a good thing, we come asking in fear, recognizing his unique authority and sovereign will that we just want to be a part of. Not because we think he has something bad, but because we think he has the best, and we know we don't deserve that. So we say, God, I know I don't deserve this good thing, but your son, Jesus, who is in me, endears himself to you. And so, God, you love me, and you means you'll show yourself to me, and you'll show me where to go. So I'm just asking you, show me, and I'll go there. And the Philistines are showing a unique power and authority of God. And lastly, they showed deference to the power of God. They showed deference to that power of God. How can we say that? For there's nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us. Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? They're saying, we defer to say, we don't know. We don't know. God maintains a significant measure of mystery from the heart of man. He maintains a significant measure of mystery from the heart of man that we just don't get. And so we ought to defer to him trust that is due to him. That we defer. We say, God, I don't understand, but I trust you. And the Philistines say, we don't know what to do. We defer. Israelites should have done that. The Israelites should have done that too. They should have deferred. God, we don't know what to do with these Philistines. We're going to go to you and we're going to ask you what to do instead. Now, it doesn't end specifically like in a real positive way, right? So a great battle ensues, resulting in complete Philistine victory. Theologically, we might have a problem with this because it doesn't make sense. The ark is there. God's glory is there. God allows his righteous glory to be stolen by another. How can we make sense of that? How do we rectify that idea? One commentator on this says this: the text forces two important implications upon us. Number one, the Lord will suffer shame rather than allow you to carry on a false relationship with him. The Lord will suffer shame rather than allowing you to carry on a false relationship with him. And then a second thing, the Lord will allow you to be disappointed with him if it will awaken you to the sort of God he really is. Because we don't have the same view towards God's glory that God does. We see it in temporal sense. We say, oh, well, in my view, God is not glorified in this thing that happened. And God does not view it that way. God is seeing what causes him to receive ultimate glory. And in this context, God was not going to receive the glory due to him until at least two people were out of the way, right? Hophni and Phinehas. They had to die. God had promised it was going to happen. It needed to happen. And a third in Eli, because he was culpable and held accountable for that. So what do we know about this then? What do we see in the text? In chapter 4, the second half of verse 10, God allowed his earthly glory for heavenly holiness. God allowed his earthly glory to be exchanged for heavenly holiness. The temporary earthly glory that we see was released in order that heavenly holiness might be established. And secondly, God allowed the capture of his glory, I'm going to put that in quotation marks, the capture of his glory and the death of his priests. I put both of those in kind of sarcastic question marks. First of all, to think that God's glory can be limited to an ark is ridiculous. And to call Hophni and Phinehas priests is equally as ridiculous. Because both of them had stolen God's glory for themselves. The people in a lack of fear and reverence, and Hophni and Phinehas in their wickedness, blatant wickedness. All right, so the story's got to get better, right? Look at verse 12. A man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day, with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of the Lord. And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. All right, I'm going to pause there for a minute. I want to make two observations. Number one, there is a foreshadowing here of someone else that's to come. You want to play the foreshadowing game with us? Anybody like to figure out movies? Anybody like to figure out movies? Any movie figure-outers? Okay. Audrey, you like to figure out movies? Okay. Can you figure out who we're pointing to? Okay, there's two hints, okay? The first hint is where the person's from. And the second hint is that he fled in fear from the battle. It doesn't mean that this is the person, but it's foreshadowing the person. Who do you think it is? No Googling, Audrey, if you're getting an electronic device out. Okay, Bible count. Okay. All right, Chad, who? No, I mean, it could be foreshadowing John. We think it may be John Mark, right? Possibly. So it could be. Think a little closer temporally. Very close to this temporally, as a matter of fact. Not David. David's not a Benjamite. Who's a Benjamite? Saul. Saul's a Benjamite. And what is Saul at his core? A narcissist. But also, like most narcissists, what happens the very first time that God calls out Saul? Remember where Samuel has to go find him? And he goes and finds him hiding behind baskets because he doesn't want to be found, because he's afraid. We're previewing some themes coming up. Saul is a coward. He's a coward. In every instance of the word, every facet of the word, he's a coward. And this Benjamite that comes, it may not be Saul, but it's possible he is. Some of the commentators on this say, it's possible because we're getting a picture of that to come. But this man flees the battle. He doesn't stick around, right? There's 30,000 people that died in this battle, and somehow this guy escapes because he ran. He was a coward, and he's a Benjamite from the tribe of Benjamin, right? So could be, nothing in the text suggests that it is, but at the very least, we're foreshadowing a bit, right? So that's the two things to kind of figure out there. The second thing is also, what's Eli doing? What's Eli doing? Is he just going about his life? He's waiting at the gate, and he's what? Shaking. He's scared. Why? Why do you think he's scared? Why do you think he's waiting at the gate? It says because of the ark, but what about the ark? Do you think he knew? He had to have had some twinge or pang of guilt, or like God was convicting him. He knew it wasn't right to send that ark. He knew it. But again, after again, after again, he lets his sons do whatever they want, whatever's right in their eyes. All right, so that's kind of the two historical markers setting up here. When Eli heard the sound, remember, they all cried out, right? And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. And when Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, "What is this uproar?" Then the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see, so he's blind. And the man said to Eli, "I am he who has come from the battle. I fled from the battle today." And he said, "How did it go, my son?" He who brought the news answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great defeat among the people. Your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward from his seat on the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. And thus ends the Lord Denethor reign, right? Thus ends Eli right then and there, dead on the spot. Here's the second main point that we want to hang on to tonight. God's glory departs that we might seek him rightly. God's glory departs that we might seek him rightly. What do you mean by rightly, right? That's kind of a high church word. It just means in the right way, right? Just that we seek as we ought to. God allows his glory to leave so that it shocks us into doing the thing we're supposed to do. All right, so the news of the ark comes in the form of a double report. It's a double report. The man shows up and he's going to tell them 2 things. First, he goes to the people of the city, and then he's going to go to Eli the prophet. The town's remorse drew an uproar. That's the first response, right? He tells the town, they find out what happens, word spreads, the people cry out, and Eli describes it as an uproar. So he trembled in fear, right? Eli trembled in fear, first of all, and then the town cried out. So Eli knows something is coming. He knows that ark's gone. He knows it's a problem. The town cries out when the news finally comes in and they hear, and then Eli's inaction cost him his life as a result. So they come back because Eli didn't do what he knew he should do and stand up. He puts everyone at risk as a result. And the result of the risk is that 30,000 men die and the Ark of the Covenant is lost. And Eli's inaction is going to not just cost him his sons, but cost him his life. If we hold on to, so I'm going to zoom back out, right, and try to make a more direct application to us in this idea of a rabbit foot theology. If we rely on rabbit foot theology to save us, we will die and die eternally in hell. There is no salvation in rabbit foot theology. God will sacrifice his glory in us, if we want to call it that, even if we wave a flag for being Bible Belt Christians. If we don't know him, he will allow our name to bring shame and rot in hell than to compromise his holiness and honor us because we say a magic name or wave a magic wand or think we trap him into some contract. We don't trap him. He traps us. His love for us, his affection for us, his conviction for our sin, they draw us in an irresistible way that causes us to finally relent and say yes. He clasps onto us and refuses to let us go. But it's not a two-way street. We can't do the same. We don't command him in any way, especially not the Holy Spirit within us. So, Eli's anxiety in the story finally reveals itself. He's been anxious about what he knew he should have done that he didn't do, and he reveals that by calling this young man to him. Hey, I want to know what happened. What happened? What happened to the ark? What happened to my sons? Like, give me the report. The young man's fear and cowardice reveal themselves. How does it reveal himself? He says, I fled from the battle today. I'm he who has come from the battle. I fled from the battle. He's saying, I left. I was a coward. This instance exposes Eli, and it exposes this young man. But something neat happens, not neat in a good way, but neat in an interesting way. Eli's not surprised. The deaths of Hophni and Phinehas are unsurprising to him. God told them they were going to happen, and so they did. It makes me think a little bit about the New Testament passage where we get some commentary about believing in God and believing in Jesus rather than having a relationship with him. That even the demons believe and they what? Tremble. They believe and they tremble in fear. It's nothing to believe it. I think Eli believed his sons were going to die. He believed his sons had violated the holiness of God. We can believe all the right things, but if we don't have a relationship, we don't submit with a sacrificial heart to God, we don't get the benefits of that belief. Eli knew the right thing to do. He knew his sons were going to die. He could have hedged his bets on the Lord, and had he called in the name of the Lord, who knows what God might have done. I think it's in the character of God to redeem people, is it not? Samson, just as a few pages before this, does God redeem the life of Samson? Absolutely, and nobody messes up more than him. God could have redeemed Eli, but even though he knew the right thing, he didn't do it. And finally, the loss of the ark is what finally breaks Eli. It's kind of your last blank there. The loss of the ark finally breaks Eli. Quite literally breaks his neck. Now, we don't, the language here is kind of funny. If we were just, I like to try to dive in the weeds for you guys because this is what you pay. It's what you pay for on Wednesday night. That's why you come out here in the middle of the cold. We don't. Sometimes you just don't know. We don't really know what this means. It says that he's sitting by the gate. Okay. Some folks say that gate was an elevated gate on top of a wall, and so he would have been sitting up on the wall, kind of awaiting news to come. But that starts to fall apart with the fact that what's wrong with Eli's eyes? He's blind. So why would he be sitting on a city gate watching for someone to come? So that's probably not it, right? But that would explain why he trips over and falls and dies. But that wouldn't explain why do you have to mention how heavy he is and how old he is. It's also possible that he's just sitting by the city gate and he's so old, he's 98 years old, right? What happens when a 98-year-old falls over now? You break something, right? It is very easy. You don't have to fall far. And if he's as heavy as they say he is, as the text says he is here, and points that out, it's almost like it took so little to finally take his life. And God allowed him to see the depth of the consequences of his sin. What are the depth of the consequences of his sin? 4,000, 30,000, his two sons, and the ark. And then he is finally allowed to die. What a sad instance. But does God waste this pain? Does he waste the hurt? No, he doesn't. We get one more episode, and I promise this week's not going to end on a happy note. I'm sorry. It's one of those chapters in the Bible that's just sad. Let's get to the wife of Phinehas. This is the last character in verse 19. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, about to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women attending her said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not give answer or pay attention. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The Lord has departed from Israel," because the ark had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." What changes? It's right there at the end. What changes? How have we described this ark the entire time? The ark of the covenant of the Lord. What does she call it? It's very possible. How does she address it? She gives up hope on that covenant, doesn't she? She says the ark of God has been captured. We drop the pretense. what happens when rabbit foot theology runs out? What do people do? They despair. They cast it aside just as easily as they believed it. It's why what God does in us is so unfathomably amazing that if it depended on us to keep contract with God, we would break that contract, right? We would break that contract. If the relationship that we have with God was based on our ability to improve upon ourselves, we would fail miserably. Just like if their relationship with God was dependent on them winning battles and God's faithfulness was dependent on them winning battles, they would lose faith as she lost faith. There's some debate here about, like, is this a positive thing? Did they finally get it? And I would argue no. No, I don't think Israel got it. I certainly don't think she got it. I just think they finally recognized what they were living in all along. We're lost. Where does this leave us? Third thing tonight, this. God's glory departs so that the sting of sin may be felt. God's glory departs so that the sting of sin may be felt. Verses 19 and 20, Eli's daughter-in-law demonstrates the effects of God's departure. What are the two effects that are here? First is this. The shock drove her to physical manifestations of distress. She is very, very pregnant, and when she finds out about her husband, her father-in-law, and most importantly, the ark that may have been, David makes a good point that I'd really not considered. It's possible they had idolized the ark to the extent that that was God to them. And if their God had been captured, they lose hope. They lose all hope. David, there's an Old Testament dissertation in that somewhere. I expect to see that out of you, a PhD at some point in time. If you want to go work that out, that'd be great. But I mean, they utterly despair at the loss of this ark. All hope's lost. Their faith in God is destroyed in that. That's the effect. The first effect is that physical manifestation. Did you know this happens to us too? This happens to us too. You take people who have been trauma victims, somebody who's been through an upbringing with a childhood trauma or an abuse or something like that, and there are measurable drops in happy drugs in the brain, right? Serotonin, dopamine, things of that nature. And we have medications now, like insulin for a type 1 diabetic, that helps to manage that. But it's never quite right again. There are effects, physical effects. Somebody who's been through a major accident or someone who's been in war and has post-traumatic stress disorder from war. These things are real and have lasting effects on people's minds. There is a physical effect from shock that drives people into distress. And either that distress can be answered by turning to God, or it can be allowing the effects of sin to run their course. And we do have a choice, believe it or not. We do have a choice. We are not victims of our circumstances to the point that we can point to a mental illness or a physical manifestation of sickness and allow that to cause us to sin. It can make our life miserable, and it can make us depend on God, but it cannot be the cause to say, this is why I sin. No, I sin because I want to sin. I sin because I want to sin. And we can get into all kinds of, trying to split hairs on when the medicine helps and when it doesn't. I firmly believe that there's good to be had in using that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the responsibility is on us to walk in righteousness through Christ Jesus in us. Not of our own understanding, not of our own volition, but because we trust, even at the end of our physical body's ability, the Holy Spirit within us is greater than our physical flesh. Greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world. Even when it doesn't make sense, He has the authority. So effect number one, we have an answer for. What about effect number two? Effect number two is the shock drove pains and losses aside. This one got to me. This one got to me a little bit because she's lost a husband and she's lost a father-in-law and she is going to die, right? She's going to die. She is dying. She says, "You born a son," but she did not answer or pay any attention. Right before she dies. She doesn't care anything about this kid. You ever seen a mother give birth? What's the first thing they care about? I want to hold that baby. Where's that child? I've carried this thing. I've fed this thing. I've not slept for this thing. I want to see that baby. Make it all worth it. And she cared not. Because the effect of sin and the sting of sin is that it drives pain and losses to the side and focuses on the self. That's what she focused on. So there's a physical reaction to that causes her life to stink as a result, that we have to face, to say there's no excuses for the physical reaction. But there's also potentially a healthy thing that comes from that. Everything else gets pushed to the side, and the thing that ought to be in focus, the sacrifice of God's glory, is the most prevalent and important thing in the story. And for better or for worse, the last thing here is true. The loss of God's glory and favor causes all else to pale in comparison. And either you will live a life that is pale without color because you are sad and broken and lost, or when it causes everything else to pale in comparison, the light of the glorious Christ becomes the only thing you see. One of those two things is going to happen. And for the believer, it is there. It is ever bright. It can never be dimmed and never be blotted out for us. But for those who are lost, nothing else will matter in life or death. And we must pray and pray and pray that God demonstrates what only He can, a convicting, righteous call to follow Him. We can't control that. We can't usher it in any more than we could usher ourselves into the presence of God. But we can call and ask and pray that God will do as His great will desires to draw men and women to Himself. And we don't have to worry about an Ark of the Covenant. And we don't have to worry about a form or function of a church. We don't have to worry about, well, did I get baptized or did I not? Because baptism saves us and it doesn't. We don't have to worry about any of that. We don't have to worry about, well, did our church have music growing up and is music allowed in church or not? And that might make God mad at me and that might not be saved. Did I mean the words I said when I was a kid? Because I believe it now, and like I follow God now, and I've given my life to Him now. I wholly 100% believe in that. But mercy, if I didn't say those words in the exact right way when I was 6 years old, I might not be a Christian. Who are we? Who are we to question the work of the Holy Spirit on us? We can see it and celebrate it, but we can't question it, whether or not He's done an effectual work. We can simply say, God, I trust You. I trust that You uphold me. I trust that when my eyes are turned from You and the world pales, that You will shine brightly, and when there is no hope, that You will be my hope. And then we will not have to hold on to a rabbit foot theology that we carry in and rub and hope that it springs the effect we want. But we walk with far more confidence, knowing on a personal, relational level the very one who died for us, so that He might not be taken away into an enemy encampment, but is buried in our heart, inextractable from our flesh, even in eternity, so that we might have heavenly bodies to walk with Him. What good news, right? All right. Any questions from 1 Samuel 4, 1b through 22? Or observations or something I missed in there? All right. It is the Lord. The text forces two important implications. Yahweh will suffer. The Lord will suffer shame rather than allow you to carry a false relationship with Him, and the Lord will allow you to be disappointed with Him if it will awaken you to the sort of God He really is. You know what? I almost left that in y'all's notes, but I needed it to fit on 2 pages. So I took it out. It wasn't a blank. It was just going to be there. I should have left it. Other thoughts, other questions, observations in the text. Chris? Well, yeah, let's see. So we get 40 years of wandering, right? So you got those 40 years that are there. And then you have Joshua takes them in the land, and he rules sometime in the land. Do we have a year? Do we have years for Joshua at the end? I want to say maybe it's 20-ish years, something like that. He doesn't reign for a long time, but he gets them settled in the land. So we'll say somewhere between 50 and 100 years at that point. And then you have the judges, which is up and down. 500 is around the time when their Babylonians come and take them. So somewhere between, they probably spent 500 or so years in the land, I think, between then and the kings. So you're probably guessing somewhere in the 50 to 100 year range. That's a really rough guess because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it would not have been, we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of years, because all you have is the time frame of Joshua, and then we have the judges in sequential order, and I think it gives the time in between judges, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have Ruth and Boaz that can happen in that time frame, and then they come on the scene with Eli. So you could count it or look it up. Yeah, it would be recent, not ancient history. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they still didn't understand. I think liken it to the Greeks having the statue to the unknown God in the Areopagus, right? Something along this is an unknown God. These are gods to us we don't get, right? The God of the Hebrews. I'm guessing somewhere around 100 years after Exodus, because you've got a 10, 20-year breakdown in these judges. You want to look it up, Chad, just while you're pulling it up? I may be way off on that, but it's decades. It's not a handful of years, and it's not 500 years, but there's a breakdown between the judges of how many between each one. This is a stretch. This is out of my comfort zone. I don't know as the Old Testament as well as I do the New. 4 to 440. There you go. So not bad for a New Testament guy. 400 to 440 years. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, when you're living 950 years, what's a big deal? What's 400? That's half a lifetime. They had stopped by this point. Those who were here on Sunday, we did some genealogy work. All right. Any other? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Benjamin's got a really bad reputation in general. Benjamin's got a really bad reputation. I mean, Benjamites were the ones who chop up the woman's body parts and send her across the nation in baskets. Yeah, Benjamin's rough. We also get left-handed people out of Benjamin. God's holy people, left-handers. Left-handed people unite. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it. Ehud sticks the knife, in, loses an arm in the process. It's real gross. It's great. I love gross parts of the Bible. Bible's totally R-rated. I don't know if you know that or not. This is not PG or PG-13. No. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Exodus, so good. The Old Testament's so good, so rich. So rich. All right. David? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. right? Yeah. So I'm going to flip it on its head. So David's question was, man, why did God pick a coward to do it when he could have picked somebody who was equipped? Chad? Handsome, tall. He's tall. He's tall. Height overrated. You'll hear that? Height overrated. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm gonna throw. I'm gonna throw one more piece into that as well. That Saul could have worked, and for a time he did. For a time, God allowed him to succeed. God does not declare anathema on Saul until much later into his kingship. God regularly, routinely uses broken, cowardly people. And had Saul's story been that through his cowardice, God showed great strength, that we would talk about him like we do like Moses, who was a coward and that God used. So I don't know that his cowardice, it's in hindsight, right? In the rearview mirror, we go, the cowardice is there, sure. But God could have used him in spite of a cowardice. Peter was a coward, yeah. Oh, yeah, he goes and finds a witch. That's one of the creepiest texts in all of the Bible is him going to a witch and her recognizing Samuel. We'll get there eventually. I had trouble researching that the first time. All right, well, look, we got folks that want to get to choir, so I'm going to pray us out tonight, okay? Lord, Father, thank you for the chance to study your word, for studying 1 Samuel. God, let it be the rest of our evening tonight be beneficial for your glory and your purposes here on this campus and across the world. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen. If you need blanks, I'll leave my pad up here so you guys can fill some of those out before you go.